Welcome to the Long Range Pursuit Podcast, presented by Gunwerks, where we learn about and share long-range shooting techniques, science, and gear. All right, welcome to the Long Range Pursuit Podcast. I'm Aaron Davidson, and I have Jaci Smith, our Director of Manufacturing Operations, joining us today. And in an effort to, share as much as we can about our company to, prospective customers or existing customers, I think it's always great to tell a little of the backstory about some of the things that we're working on or the things that we've accomplished and share a little bit of information about where we're going. It's something that I've tried to do better at as a leader here at Gunwerks is to bring everybody into the vision of where we're going so that everybody knows where they're supposed to pull. But thanks for joining today. And I think we're going to have some fun. This is the first podcast you've done with Gunwerks?
This is the first podcast ever.
All right. So for our listeners, Jaci is the most accomplished, awesome, talented person that I have working for me, but she is so self-conscious about about how she comes across. But this will be a great story. So I wanted to talk today about Gunwerks headquarters. It's the new facility that we just put together. You played a really big role in getting our manufacturing operations moved over here and set up, and have played a huge role in the past as far as supply chain problems and trying to solve those so that we can serve our customers better. So I felt like today's topic could be a little bit of the backstory for, getting into this building and some of the challenges and goals that we had coming into this building. And then we can talk a little bit more specifically about, where we're investing and growing and where we're going with this new facility and what it allows us to do or what our goals are for this building. So why don't you start off with a little recollection, a little remembrance about moving into this facility?
About moving into this facility?
Yeah.
It was a 2-week process. It was 2 weeks to get us into the building and about 1.5 years of organizing, two plus years of organizing. But we had a schedule. We planned kind of every hour of every day for 2 full weeks, and when cranes were showing up and when trucks were going to be arriving at buildings and going to other buildings, and a lot of help from the whole entire company. We looked at outsourcing some of the moving process, but we ended up doing it all ourselves. So people that had been laying up stocks and chambering rifles were out packing boxes and inventory, and it's a pretty labor intensive process, but everyone pitched in and helped.
I've always felt like in any of the big projects that we do, when we bring everybody in and put everybody together to work on them, we end up with a better result. So I've always felt like that buy-in from everybody and that willingness to roll up sleeves and to pitch in and do whatever it takes to be successful has been, one of the hallmarks that our team has demonstrated repeatedly. But so to be clear, what was your stop producing rifles to start producing rifles time that you achieved on that move?
I believe it was 2 weeks from the time that we unplugged the machine to it being plugged in down here and chambering again.
Yeah, that is impressive. I don't know if anybody's done a move like that before, but we had about 13,000 square feet of space at that facility, and then we had about 5,000 square feet of admin, and then we had that small 2,500 square foot shop with the clean space. So we had 3 different facilities that we cleaned out that we brought over. I think we had about 20 extra square feet at that manufacturing shop. So it was packed full. There was a lot of machines that had to come over. And coordinating all the trades, the electricity and the moving guys and just the guys that need to come set up machines, and it was a pretty big task. Yeah. What was the biggest challenge that you found coming over?
Honestly, I think material handling was the one I didn't plan for the most. I kind of thought things would fall in place on shelves, and some of the shelving didn't quite line up how I envisioned they would. So not having that documented so that people knew where they were putting things.
Sure.
The machines, we really focused on that. So, I mean, the cranes moved in, it was taped out. They knew where they were going. Air was there. Electricity was there. It was all the little stuff. And there was a lot of little stuff and it all eventually made it and found a home, but it kind of was a bit scattered.
You think about the quantity of little things that $6 million worth of inventory would add up to. It would be overwhelming to try to keep that straight and move it in. But I think, how many times have we rearranged? We've only been here a year and a half. A couple, huh?
I feel like it's about every 6 months. And I feel like we had to detach a little bit. So when we originally moved in here, there was this plan, like, we're going to plan everything and we're going to get it right. And we're going to only move machines once. And then once we got in here, it's like, okay, part of growing and developing, and that is being flexible. And it's like, ooh, that chambering cell could be a little bit better if we did this way. Or what if we use this machine instead of the one that was there? And so it's been a continual process of continuing to rearrange to optimize things. It's not a set it in place and leave it.
Talk about regrets. One of my biggest regrets is when we set up that manufacturing space, I wanted to have powered rails. And so when you go to drop a machine, you literally just reach up, you clip in a breaker and put the drop to the machine. And if you need to move it, you unclip the breaker, you move it to the next spot, you clip it back in, and you're set up. And I really think that would be awesome for us right now, because right now we have to redo conduit and pull new wire, and it's quite a bit more intense operation. So it slows you down a little bit on the removes. How about we chat about a little bit of the why on the building? So I've got my whys, and I try to share those, but talk to me a little bit about some of your goals for why this move and why this change.
A lot of it was shop floor space. And that benefited us in a couple of ways. One, being able to add machines, and so that we can bring stuff in-house, giving us more storage space so we could have more material here, increase our in-stock availability, and then taking control of a lot of our supply chain so that we could have faster turn times and better quality.
So let's just dive into that a little bit. So talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges that we see at our size in our space. And our size, sometimes our size is big, but sometimes our size is really, really small.
I feel like we're like in an in-between, because we're big enough that we have a fairly big demand that I can't be like, hey, send us a couple thousand of these. And they're like, well, that's a lot. But it's not so big that we can use up someone's capacity and be their main customer.
Yeah.
And so being in that in-between size, it's just a big enough order to be a pain for someone, and just small enough that I can't leverage and throw any weight around with it.
Yeah. No, I've seen that. I've seen some of those struggles that we've had there, and I do realize that is a challenge that we have. So if we start talking about the why floor space, or why the extra material handling and storage space works for us, give me an example of one of our material problems that we've had in recent history, and how floor space, vertical integration, et cetera, is going to help benefit our company and our customers.
I'd say composites would probably be the one I would go to first. I think of how much carbon we can bring in, and we have all those rolls, and we have one whole room that's dedicated to it now. And historically, when we've had long lead times on carbon, we've been at risk of having stockouts, and we have a handful of employees in there that then, one, they're not doing anything, and two, it's not moving the company forward if we're out of material. So being able to have that floor space, or one whole room that's the right temperature to be able to store carbon long term. Yeah,
it's interesting. A lot of the moves that we're making for vertical integration generally have the direction of help us buy a more raw material state. For instance, say like a 1-inch round bar, 6061 T6 aluminum. So that bar we can purchase from a lot of different manufacturers, or at least the theory is that we can purchase from a lot of manufacturers. If we did an extruded shape, that would be harder, because now we have a tool, and generally you're at a dedicated supplier. And then if you have a pre-machined part, the time it takes to set up a vendor to machine a part and to qualify it and to fill up the pipeline, what would you guess that is?
Well, there's quoted times and there's actual times.
Tell me the actual time.
The actual time, I think, as long as I've had some that reached on for 10 months on very simple parts that, we went through the quoting process. We ordered in our first articles. We looked at them, had to make a few corrections where they didn't quite interpret things correctly, and then got first articles, and then went to production.
So wouldn't those be second articles, not second
first articles? Yeah, probably second article.
So 10 months, what do you think the fastest expected time would be?
If they have material on the shop floor.
And capacity.
And scheduling. Yeah, and I guess like I've had some fast ones, but it's normally because I steal our own spots. Like I needed shrouds, but they already had material for another titanium part that happened to be the same size, and they had it on the schedule. I'm like, okay, I actually can push that part out. Let's go ahead and do these instead. And so I've had those in, I'm going to say 1 to 2 months, but it wasn't organic. It was because I can force things.
I would say generally we're probably 6 months. You think is probably a realistic. You spool up. So talk about how it benefits our customer, in your opinion or your view, for us to be able to procure, a raw material state and do the manufacturing in-house. So from your perspective, I've got my ideas, but let's see how they match up.
I think lead time's the biggest one when I look at, and I guess like the configurations. When we used to order in our stocks, like we had to forecast out, then we had a 3 to 9 month lead time on different stocks. And so if we didn't forecast correctly as to what stocks we needed, then someone orders, LR1000 back in the day, and we ordered too many Magnus stocks, and they end up having extended lead time. Having it in-house, like we can deliver things a lot faster.
So when you started with us, what do you remember what our lead time was on a rifle system?
Not off the top of my head. I want to say it was greater than 120 days.
Yeah. We were pushing on the order of about 6 months is the turn times that we generally had. And we were trying to build with suppliers that were 4 to 5 months in their delivery times. So we were kind of just growing out of the traditional custom rifle build where a customer orders X, you go buy all the parts for X, and when all the parts for X show up, then you assemble it into your rifle system. And the problem with that was your lead time is your longest supplier's lead time plus your time, which I remember our rifle cycle time was around 8 weeks, 6 weeks, just on the normal build schedule without any delays. And so we had another 2 months on top of that. And when we would do a rifle stock design, and then we would provide, like a plug or a model or a design to a supplier, and then they would produce that stock shell for us. Then we would bring it in and do all the machine inletting and all the, the finish assembly with recoil pads and all that stuff. But we were seeing 6 months and sometimes, as long as 9 months on the delivery of those. And so that's where Jaci talks about this problem where we need to deliver a product to a customer in less than 6 months, and yet our suppliers may exceed that time frame. So that's where you start stocking inventory. So you build a safety stock of an inventory and then just take a really good guess at how many it should be. And that's where the inventory, amount starts to build. And we've used inventory levels to level so to speak, that demand, so that your inventory budget that you have essentially lets you draw on that reserve or that safety stock to produce things faster, and then our suppliers and vendors can replenish. And so it takes a lot of forecasting and a lot of guess. It's an area that we have a lot of opportunity for improvement, I think.
I think I guess on the high side most of the time.
Yeah, I think so. So I think if you talk about vertically integrating, I can pick out a couple different ways. So lead time's one. Last year, even with all the supply chain interruptions and all of the stuff that was going on, I believe our average lead time for a custom make to order rifle, no, actually, I think it's all rifles. Average lead time was 48 days. That's pretty fast.
I actually never looked at them all together. I gave the...
That was custom make to order?
I just looked at like Magnus versus Verdict, like the different SKUs.
Yeah.
I think the Magnus was the one that was 48.
48 was Magnus. Yeah. So that is tremendous lead time. So I think a customer gets a benefit when they can have their product faster. So vertical integration, I believe that there's time, there's cost, and there's quality, right? So would you agree that when we can produce something in-house and we have the more control over the production of that we can produce at a better quality?
I believe so. I mean, we have instant feedback as to when things are going wrong. We don't have, when we had that huge inventory, and if we had issues, then we had to figure out how to fix it, and we had to deal with the lead time on top of it. So it's like being able to fix it right away.
Yep.
And then the fact that we have all the engineers here, we have a whole office space full of them.
Yeah.
We can address those issues when they do arise. And
yeah, so it gives us a faster approach to catching quality issues or making changes to parts. I also think, we know what's important, and we can decide to check the things that are important. So I think that allows us to drive a better quality as well. So I think time is there. I think quality is there. Let's talk about cost. From our first dabble in what we're doing, do you feel that it saves us a lot of money to manufacture in-house or not?
I think the suppressors are like the best example of that. When we were ordering all the suppressor parts in, and then when we brought in raw material, I guess it depends how you factor in machine costs.
Yeah.
If you don't factor in the cost of the machine, like that price, it was cut in half.
The raw material cost definitely goes down. It really the machine cost really depends on the utilization. So if you can utilize that machine a lot, then it drives the unit costs down. I would argue, yes, that in that case on suppressors, we were able to save some cost. The flip side I would point out was the stocks. Like, we didn't save any money bringing composites manufacturing in-house. Those stocks actually cost us more. So what is the benefit that the customer received by us bringing stock manufacturing in-house?
One, I think we just delivered a better product, bringing it in-house. Like, our guys are invested. We try to give them exposure to our customers so that they know what they're putting their hands on and where
Sure.
it's going, that connection. But just bringing it in-house and the quality of having it here so that we can control it.
Yeah, if you look at the designs that we did as we were bringing the process in-house, you can't do those designs with some of the traditional stock making processes because of the edges that we have and the shapes that we have. It's just not conducive. So I feel like we improved our quality a lot. So they're getting a higher quality design, and they're getting a higher quality finish on the rifle stock shells. So I think that it's a quality situation. So the goal is to win on all three, but if we can at least win on two, I think it's a win decision to vertically integrate. So one of the big pushes that we've got coming up in this facility and over the next couple of years is just bringing all of our aluminum parts in-house, and there's a lot of different parts. So I think that's going to be a big spool up. We've got some big machines that we're landing and a big load of work ahead of us to do that. So maybe talk a little bit about some of the supply chain risk that we're mitigating by vertically integrate. Put a positive spin on it.
Yeah. I mean, when COVID happened and everything after, I went into a bit of a hoarding, panic buying, and I increased our inventory. I didn't quite double it, but I came pretty close to doubling our inventory when things started to get scarce. We didn't have any interruptions in production here the whole entire time that COVID was going on, and I don't think that was the case for a lot of other companies. I mean, that's kind of an extreme example when the whole world goes into chaos. That we have raw material here, we can control our own destiny that way. Yeah.
So the advantage I see is we'll have raw material, massive quantities of raw material, which will be a lot lower cost than finished goods.
It's only a year's worth.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think mitigating the supply chain interruption risk helps us produce more effectively and more consistently, which helps us continue to deliver to customers. I do see that this year that we have sold really well. The demand just keeps increasing for our product, and you have to react to that on the inventory side, or else it's going to catch you out. That's a big challenge. It's hard to forecast, isn't it?
I feel like I reacted early on that when I got material here, and then sales kind of picked up, and now I have a staffing production that I was a little behind the ball on that one.
Yeah,
And
for
so-
peeps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the truth is we're getting pretty mature about how we look at employees and how we recruit and hire employees. And we realize that it doesn't do us any good to bring somebody in to fill a position. We only want to bring people in that we want to work with. And that takes a while sometimes to filter out. But I've seen the results. Like our team on the floor right now, it is awesome. Like we have got a great bunch of people that are turning out great products, and they're all vested in, what we're doing. Nobody's just picking up paychecks here.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference.
It's a really good group of guys.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the big challenges you see coming up in facility and supply chain management here?
I think it goes back to that. One of the ones that we talked about move is just material handling. We have machines dropping, and I feel like a machine drops probably every 2 months, and making sure that we have all the material handling in the right spots, finding our bottlenecks, addressing the bottlenecks, and making sure that sell before it never stocks out of material, and having the shelving in place, having a plan for how you hold all this material is almost as important as getting the material here. So if you can't find it, you can't get to it, and that doesn't do you a whole lot of good. So
yeah,
organizing.
We've seen that. Without dropping too much information, I think that new product lines, it looks to me like they're going to cause major disruptions in the tempo and flow of material through our shop. I think that's a huge challenge ahead of us this year as we introduce a new product line and spool up for the manufacturing of that from 0 to hopefully 100, right? Yeah. I've got a bullet point on here to talk a little bit about the way that we're purchasing machine equipment. I think it's a cool opportunity to share that 4-day work schedule that we've allowed the production shop to work, and some of the steps that we've done to try to accommodate getting more throughput from that schedule without having to disrupt it with like split shifts or swing shifts or anything like that. And that is, as we've been buying these new machines, buying machines that are geared for automation. And for example, on the suppressor cell, being able to run that, 22 hours a day and have 12 hours, 10 hours of unattended operation every day. That was a pretty big deal for increasing the throughput of that machine, and without having to stock, another person and have a night shift and all that stuff. Yeah. So I think that is one of the exciting things, but also the more challenging things is because that automation requires a higher level of skilled employee. So we don't just have operators on our CNC machines. We have CNC machinists. We have a lot of our guys that work on the shop floor also run CAM programs, and that's shows a level of competency that maybe is a little different than some shops run, so that they can be vested in those machine tool paths and programs because they're also pulling parts off and in charge of quality as well. So it's kind of a nice little circle that we put together there. So you talked a little bit about staffing challenges, bringing up some guys. Maybe share just a few of the efforts that you've had to go through over the last month just to try to, put the people in place that we need.
So machinist is kind of, I'm going to say, one of our more difficult ones. There's a lot of roles on the shop floor that we can bring someone in-house, just entry level, and train them on the go. And I tried that a few times with machines, and I have some guys that are really talented and they're able to learn on the fly. But in general, I think it's a lot harder. These kids, well, not always kids, but these guys that come out of the 2-year programs, those trade schools, and we put them on machines, they are just set up for success, and it's a better quality product. It's better for the person there. They're less stressed. They know what they're doing. And it's just overall a better work environment as far as like what we get out of them. So I have been working with a couple of the colleges to kind of recruit straight out of school. When as far as working with like their enrollment and when they have low numbers, do some brainstorming with them and talk about different ways that we can get their enrollment up. I need them just as much as they need me. Like I need machinists, which means I need kids in there. And if they're struggling to get kids into those programs, then I need to step in.
You know, one of the things I've been really pleased with is some of the older talent that we've been able to pull in, which, man, when you look at what these guys can do, like it gives me goosebumps thinking about some of the things those guys can make. It's pretty exciting.
It really is amazing. Like machinists in general, I have so much respect for them of being able to just take like this raw aluminum or steel part and make really, really intricate designs. When you look at skilled labor, like I think that's super impressive.
Yeah. So that we do see the benefit of that experience either in entry level positions or supervisory or specifically the R&D positions where it's something new all the time. And that end-to-end skill of even feedback in the design to CAM programming to, machine setup and tooling, and then execution of the product and even the inspection and quality assurance aspect. So we've seen really good success bringing those people in, and then we've tried to mirror that with our entry level positions, I think, and it's yielded a really cool environment out there on the shop floor. Yeah.
I love like the range of experience that we have out there. So we have Jim, who's a super accomplished machinist, like that guy, where he can build anything. And when we bring in some of the younger ones, they end up being able to just be like under Jim's wing. Like they really look up to him. And it was really interesting. I mean, they just sat and talked for probably an hour and a half the other day. And these kids were just asking question after question. One of them, like they're out in the shop floor and he like pulls a notebook out and he starts like taking notes down. It was really cool to see them interact together.
From a leadership perspective, I feel like the mentorship and growth of employees is probably one of the hardest things to develop in a culture in a company. And I see it in evidence out there with that group, probably more than any other place that we have. And it is kind of exciting to watch. And we should use that as a pattern, in some of our other departments to help people grow. Well, I think we had a great discussion today, and it's kind of a setup podcast because what I want to do is in the next episode, it's the tag end episode. So I want to go spend some time on the shop floor with Jaci. So we're going to grab our camera crew and we'll go mic up and catch maybe the tail end of a production shift and surprise some of these guys working. But we're going to go through and look at some of these different areas and have a quick chat about some of the specific benefits that these investments that we're making have for our customers, whether it's a quality, it's a time or a throughput, or it's a cost issue. And we'll talk about how we're trying to mitigate some of the supply chain problems and the cost increases we're seeing with raw materials across the board, and how we're trying really, really hard, to keep our pricing consistent as we go forward. So let's wrap this episode. Thanks so much, Jaci. I know I put you on the spot with a couple tough questions. You did great. And we'll hit the shop floor and we'll pick up in part 2 of our discussion about the building and our operations and how we're trying to win for our customers. For all you listeners, thanks for joining, and we appreciate your support for the Long Range Pursuit podcast.
If you like what you're hearing here, please take a second and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate your feedback and suggestions for topics you'd like discussed or questions you want answered on the podcast. You can reach out on Facebook or Instagram or send us an email to podcast@gunwerks.com. Also, be sure and check out our full offering of long-range gear at gunwerks.com. Use promo code LRP for free shipping on any order.